ADK checking in here, and today is a special day because this is the first episode of our That Part podcast. A lot of you have been asking for it, so here it is. I got two special guests that I'm excited that's on the show that's going to share a little bit about them, their early childhood, turning points, and just some insightful tips really to how to navigate and get through your struggle, no matter where you are, what you're going through. Where you start is not where you have to finish. So without further ado, my first guest I would like to introduce is my guy Henry. So yeah, just a little bit, your name, where you're from, and what you do.
Yes, sir. So my name is Henry Escobar. I'm the owner of Fitness Junkies Gym. I was born in Los Angeles, California. Lived out in South Central LA for part of my childhood, and then moved out here to Arizona as a kid still. But I come from, I got two siblings. We are Salvadorian descent, mother and father. So, we made the move out here, try to avoid trouble out there in California, basically.
I hear that. All right, OTG, what you got for us, man?
Yeah, my name is OGT. My artist name, I'm JJ Hernandez. Grew up out here in the West Valley. Own my barbershop, OG's Barbershop, that we just opened up, and I have my G's First Studios company, and I'm an artist out of the Rich and Ruthless family as well.
All
Yes,
right.
sir.
So let's jump right into it.
Yes, sir.
All right. Early childhood. Not so much too early. When I mean childhood, when I was a teenager, I was still a child. I thought I was a man, but apparently I wasn't. So first question for you, Henry. What was home like for you growing up?
Man, for me, my dad was a truck driver, so he was gone a lot. My mom worked when we were teens. So, my childhood was pretty normal, man. As a kid, I'd hang out with my brother and friends, and we're break dancers, man. When I was young, I started break dancing when I was about 11, 12. Break dancing got me into graffiti. So we did the graffiti, the break dancing, the tagging, and that's kind of what I got into when I was a kid, man, out here. So, my childhood was pretty chill, man. I like to live by my own rules, man, and I think that's for me as a kid, man. My parents were very strict, believe it or not, bro. My parents were very strict. But, when you're a teenager, you kind of think you can do it all, and there's no rules that apply to you. So, I'm the middle child, and they say the middle child is usually the problem child, man, and it was a lot like that growing up. I put my parents probably through the most out of all my siblings.
Wow. And what about you, OTG? How was your...
My growing up, it's one of those, my parents came from Mexico. I'm actually the first generation of a citizen that was born in the States from my family. You know what I mean? And, so my parents worked two jobs all the time, hardly ever home.
Yep.
It's kind of like Henry said, I had a lot of freedom and not too much discipline when I was growing up and becoming a teenager, that it kind of really impacted the direction I took in life as a young teen, you know what I mean? And it wasn't that I had bad parents or anything, it's just that they had to work hard to give us what we needed.
Gotcha.
So they were hardly ever home, work during the day, work during the evening. So we had all that freedom to kind of just explore and kind of spend the whole day out in the streets, doing all that, so led from one thing to another. And but as far as, my life at home, it was always great. We always got the best that my parents could get for us at that time. We weren't
100%.
people with money or nothing like that, you know what I mean? So I got to grow up seeing my friends have the best of the best, and then I had to just accept that that's not where we were at. So, the best of the best was whatever my mom was able to provide for us.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, and I'm just quickly share a little bit about mine. Man, at 5 years old, I just remember waking up, being walked down the road by CPS. My mother threw a party, and I guess one of the neighbors told on her, beer everywhere, and they were like, what's going on? These kids are just, are neglected for the better half. And so from 5 years old, man, I've never adopted, but from 5 years old, I just remember being walked down the street, and my mother, I've rarely seen her after that. You know what I mean? And what's interesting about in the home, the people that raised me were they were from the South, so they were very strict. You know what I mean? And when I mean strict, it was like, don't be in grown folks' business. You eat when you eat, so on and so forth. But unfortunately, because we weren't their kids, things were different. That feeling when your mom is really loving you and your father. But not having that, you know what I mean? I kind of had to take that out in school, the anger, the aggression. You know what I mean? But it's interesting to see, you know what I mean, and hear you guys' story because what I hear is, you know, we had some idle time to do some things, you know what I mean, that obviously our parents wouldn't want us to do. And whether you're raised with parents or not, I did the same, you know what I mean, I kind of did the same thing, you know, so that tells me there's something about, I don't want to call you us hard-headed, but there's something about our experience that we went through to really get us to where we are today, which is a blessing because some people don't make it this far. You know what I mean? So what about, so tell me more about like your friends, you know what I mean? Like, so how was your neighborhood? How was the neighborhood and everything? How was your friends?
For me, my neighborhood was cool, man. I grew up in Maryville,
Yep.
and
You said Maryville?
Maryville, and
Wait,
I still live in Maryville right
where I
now.
grew up, too.
Oh, no, you talking about the Maryville?
Maryville, right here, everything off of Big
West
City
Valley.
between McDowell and Camelback, from
Gotcha.
about 83rd to about 51st, 43rd.
Okay. No, I just
is
heard some stuff. I'm not from here, but I have heard Maryville was not the place.
It was not the
That,
place.
you know what
I
mean?
love Maryville.
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
I grew up
We-
in
yeah,
Maryville,
yeah,
bro.
you know,
That was my.
You know, like for me, man, as a kid, I walked around with a chip on my shoulder a lot. As a younger kid, man, my parents used to discipline us a lot. My dad, my mom, they used to, you know, nowadays, you know, you consider it abuse.
Right. Yeah,
You know, but they did it with love, I'd say, you know what I mean? But I definitely got disciplined a lot, you know, as a kid to where, you know, I was getting whooped by my mama, whooped by my dad. So I walked around with a lot of anger as a kid. And I would see my parents come home frustrated from work. You know, they didn't have papers. And they were under a lot of stress. And for me and my brother, it kind of felt like they took it out on us as kids a lot, daily. And, you know, for me, I think that's where my brother started getting in trouble in LA. And we decided to move out here to try to stay away. But it wasn't really necessarily out there. It was the environment that we lived at. I think that was causing us to be aggressive. So when we moved out here, first week of school, I got in a fight, you know, first week of school. And, you know, it was basically my whole childhood. You know, my dad whooping our ass till we were 16, 17, and grew whooping our ass like men, you know. I mean, I'm talking about the point where I've been kicked unconscious by my dad, you know. So I grew up with a lot of anger, bro. So when I hit these streets in school, man, I didn't take a lot from a lot of people, bro, because I had all this built-in frustration. So I got in a lot of fights, and that carried through my adult days. And you know, but I never resented my parents because my parents worked really hard, and I understood their frustration. So, you know, when I was a kid, when I was 15, I started selling weed because I saw how hard my dad worked. My mom worked at Krager, and I didn't have the heart to ask them for money because I'd see, you know, like they worked so hard. So when I was a kid, man, you know, in high school, as soon as I started slanging. I used to roll joints and put them in cigarette boxes and sell them in high school. That's how I started making money when I was in high school, bro. And, you know, and I think it's crazy when I tell people that I had a great childhood. You know what I mean? Because my parents were very loving. They just had a lot of things going on for themselves where, you know, in the family itself, you know, it wasn't perfect, but a lot of the things I got into later on down in life were because I feel, you know, you walk around feeling like, you know, like you have a lot of bottled up frustration and that shit pours right into the streets, basically.
Yeah.
Gotcha. What about you? What you think? What was your neighborhood, school, friend circle like?
I grew up in Maryville too, man. Back in those days too, in the 90s, it was rough. You know, the streets were rough, the gangs were hot.
Yep.
I was a part of that whole scene. My childhood getting to the friends that I met at that time, I went kind of to a similar thing, but my stepfather raised us when we were little.
Gotcha.
But there was big animosity because he knew my biological father and they didn't get along. So I feel like me and my sister got the backlash for that growing up, you know what I mean? Especially, you know, me looking like my father and all this stuff. So we had a lot of abuse, physical abuse growing up from my stepfather.
Yep.
And he wasn't somebody that would spank us with a belt or nothing like that. It's kind of like him, you know, he knocked my jaw out of place one time for not cleaning the refrigerator, you know, things like that. So I grew up with that animosity, that anger.
Yep.
You know, never blamed my mom because she was always hustling to to get us to where we were, you know what I mean? And she would defend us when she found out about situations like that. But that really grew that tension. And once I got out into the streets and started meeting my friends, it was like an outlet for me, you know what I mean? I didn't have to go home and deal with what I had to deal with, and I could let my frustration out on the streets, you know, things like that. So growing up, it was kind of, you know, similar to Henry. We just had to find our own way.
Yep.
You know, we're like on survival mode, and then try to prove that the life that I had at home wasn't the life that I was going to allow myself to have. And the only downside to that was I found the streets as my way out instead of trying to find something positive, you know what I mean? Growing up and being in school, I was really good at sports. I was real artist drawing, bro, really good. And we used to win awards, but it got to the point where growing up and having these award ceremonies for either sports or art and stuff like that, my parents were never there. Yeah. You know what I mean? And they would have banquets, and I would show up to the banquets by myself, and everybody would be with their families, and other families would feel so bad. Well, you could come and sit with us, you know what I mean? So it got to the point to where once that frustration built, it was just like, the hell with this. Why am I even doing this? Why am I focused on this, you know?
Yeah.
So my focus went out into the streets, and it kind of led from there, and got into a lot of trouble growing up as a teenager. I really didn't have a teenage life because I was pretty much locked up until I was like almost 19, from 14 years old. You know, so I got really deep in what we were doing in the 90s, kind of hung on to that as like my escape. But because I did that, it kind of really derailed my whole life at childhood. You know what I mean? So I never really had a childhood as a teenager. I was locked up and dealing with the realities that I had to deal with at that time. So it was a little bit rough. You know, like my stepfather now, I love the man. Like, we're really close right now, you know, as adults. And I think it had to do with my trajectory as I grew older and got out of, you know, from being incarcerated. I had to really find a way to like find the man that I was going to be, because I was never a man. Nobody showed me. My whole lifestyle was being in the streets, getting involved in gangs, and kind of living in jail, you know what I mean, and survival mode in jail. Absolutely. So coming out, that was kind of just an eye-opener to where I really had to find myself, and I had to find out what I was going to do, because I could no longer rely on moms or anybody. I wanted to be my own individual, you know what I mean?
Wow. So, yeah, you guys, it's just amazing. There's just some things that's popping out to me, because when you're going through the storm, right, the only thing you can look to blame is the storm, the rain. But you don't realize, you know, on the other side of that, if you make it out, the blessing, right? So the objective, you know, of what our parents were doing was to protect us in their way. And I found that out through, you know, being a child. I was on PEN's personal needed supervision, 4th and 5th grade. And unfortunately, when I went to school, as soon as I left the door, as soon as you go to the bus stop, somebody picking on you. And the way we were raised was, you say anything about whatever, it is what it is. You know, and being kids that didn't grow up with we didn't have any cousins or nothing. You know, we were given away, so most of my family I didn't even know. So most people ran with cliques. You know what I mean? So, but if you didn't have that, you were by yourself. But what helped me out was I didn't take anything from anybody. Yeah. And unfortunately, when I went to school, I was put on Ritalin, you know what I mean, in special ed. Yeah. And unfortunately, if only they knew what I was going through at home, because same thing, like when I say we got disciplined because they was just tired of talking to us. It wasn't, I'm gonna give you 2 times. It was, you know, sometimes no warning, hit with a broomstick, slammed, you know what I mean? I mean, unfortunately, I think I was around 7 years old, and I was hungry because we didn't really eat like that. So I couldn't just go in the refrigerator. You know what I mean? I couldn't just, it was very peculiar when I look at it, like, yo, I don't understand why you couldn't, because I got kids now. If they hungry, I give them whatever they want. We wasn't on that type of time. So one time, I went in and I stole some popcorn. I was starving. It's the popcorn you pop in the microwave. And I stole some popcorn and I put it back, but I didn't put it back the right way. And the guy was like, yo, did you take the popcorn? And I was like, no, because I was scared. And then he asked me again. And then I said, yeah. So he took me in the basement, and I got beat real bad. I got black eye and everything, right? So I go back upstairs. Luckily, somebody came down there and was like, yo, what are you doing? You know what I mean? But I go back upstairs and I sit down. And in that moment, I got my legs crossed. I could remember like it was yesterday. I'm sitting there. I'm like, God, I don't understand what I did wrong. But what I learned through that was being honest is important. I'd rather you tell me you did it, you know? And that for me was a turning point. Just in that little moment, like maybe there is something wrong with just doing things because you think and again, we talk about survival of the fittest. Right. If you're starving, what are you going to do? You're going to find a way to eat. You know what I mean? But again, the integrity piece of it. Because I look back and I see what I'm trying to instill in my kids, just tell me the truth. And worst case scenario is you may get a consequence, but you may not. But you definitely will if you lie. And I think lying in that moment, and again, being a 7-year-old child with a black eye is crazy. You know what I mean? And I went to school, I took it out on school. So I had a probation officer, we went to the county center, we had a probation officer, I'm there with grown men, looking these grown men in the face, I had to pee in a cup, everything. And I didn't realize how abnormal that was until I got older. And I was like, yeah, this is crazy. You know what I mean? But so Henry, what was your lowest point, the moment you thought, I might not make it out?
Shit, man, I had so many of them. Honestly, man, like, I think for me, I kind of continue off where I went to Trevor Brown here. And I think it was shortly after high school, I got a girl pregnant. And right before he was born, I got shot. And that was kind of a big eye opener for me, because it was probably about 3 months before my kid was born. And then shortly after that, got hooked on drugs, man. I would always smoke weed, and I started, we were partying a lot. Like I said, I grew up in the 90s. I was supposed to graduate, 99, and partying a lot, man. And it was rough, bro. I think for me, it was kind of a blur. My 18s through my 20s, I was doing a lot of drugs. I was smoking glass. I was addicted to glass for a while. And when I had my kid, I was there, I was present, but I wasn't. And that's something I don't talk about a lot. I was raising a kid. I was a kid, but I was out doing so much. I didn't miss anything, but I wasn't there. And it's hard to explain. You know what I mean? I reflect on that now that he's older, and I've never even had that conversation with him. Like I have my daughter, and I'm very involved, and it's so different. But for me, as I got older, I went through a ton of stuff. Like I said, we just getting in a lot of trouble on the streets, man. But I think my turning point in life, and honestly, man, that's why I like to talk to people, is it wasn't even until I got older, bro. I didn't really figure out. I was going through depression through my 20s into my 30s. And I think the lowest point of my life was 7 years ago, man. When I was real depressed. And the craziest thing, man, is I was making a ton of money. And it wasn't even about money. It was about a void that I felt I had in life. Like I said, and I was, I had a good job, making over $100,000 a year for 7-8 years. But there's just something, man, that was just missing in my life, bro, to the point where, I was in a pretty dark place in time. I tried to take my life. But it was one day where I found God. It was that day in my room where I wanted to take my life. And ever since then, that was like my lowest point. I think between, like I said, I went through a lot of ups and downs in life. I got in a lot of trouble. I've had a lot of friends that aren't here with me, man, that have passed away in the streets. And it really, everything, it was kind of an accumulation of years where I felt like I was just a waste of space. I was unhappy with myself, and I really could never figure out what it was. And, it took me to that lowest point of one day, trying to take my life, to where that day I found God. And, it really shifted my mindset on the perception of life. And that's kind of where I feel like my life really began, is after that day. And it's sad to say that because I already had kids then. But it's one of those things, as a parent, man, life flies by you, bro, because you're in dad mode. So you could be feeling dead inside. But as a parent, you have a responsibility to man the fuck up. And you got to pull weight, you got to provide, you got to do this, you got to do that. I didn't have time to dwell, but when I was by myself, I lived by myself in a house by myself. When I didn't have my kids, that's when it would hit. So for years, I was able to just kind of bury every emotion I had, every thought, until I came to, face to face with my own fears. But yeah, man, it was actually, it's cool because now when I see it as it was a blessing. At the time it was rough, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me, was finding God.
Wow.
And then that was that day in my bedroom, by myself.
Yeah. Amazing. That's crazy, man, and inspiring, because we live in a society today where people chase everything but the right thing. But unfortunately, they are looking for truth. And some people find it in a bottle, in a blunt. Some people find it, robbing, stealing, killing. And it's great to hear stories like yours and what you're saying because a lot of our youth really feel as if, we can't relate to them because we're adults and we got it and we're perfect, right? Obviously, ideally, we want our kids to think that, right? Like, but the fact and the reality is what? That we are more broken than they would ever know. You know what I mean? And as men, it's very important that men understand that we show emotion differently than women. You know what I mean? And it's not. And sometimes you mentioned something about being there, but you wasn't really there, right? It's like I was present, but I wasn't involved. I wasn't actively involved. You know what I mean? I was just kind of coasting because this is my responsibility. And life gets real like that. You know what I mean? What about you? What are your lowest moments that you can think of? Going through whenever, like.
Yeah, I think mine would have to be when I got out as well. Being locked up in there as a kid is one of those things where you're still a kid, so you're just like, I'm gonna deal with this. It wasn't something that I looked at that was like, oh, I'm in a terrible position. It was something that like, okay, I got myself here now. I got to get out of here. Like I got to survive this. So it wasn't so much as me trying to better myself. It wasn't me trying to figure out how to be the best of me. It was me trying to make sure I get out. You know what I mean? But once I got out, it was rough, and then I got to points where I even lived in my car, for a while, just trying to figure out what I was gonna do. I didn't know nothing, man. I didn't know nothing but being in the streets. Now here I am, 19. I'm gonna be 20 years old. You know what I mean? And I have nothing. Yeah. And then I'm seeing everybody my age having cars. They have their own cribs, things like that. And I didn't have none of that. So my main thing was just like, what am I gonna do? Like, what am I gonna do to get myself to a level where I can have these things and I can live a life? Because right now, the only thing that I know is where I came from, and going back sounded pretty good at that time.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I felt secure.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it got to the point where it was a struggle, man. It was a real struggle. I didn't really know how to do much. Ended up, my biological father, when I got out, ended up contacting me. So I thought, oh man, this is something new. This might be it. He used to call me saying, I run a construction company. Why don't you come down to Denver? I got you a job. Let's get you back on track to do that. Oh, let's go, let's do it. So took a plane to Denver, Colorado, bumped heads with my dad immediately. Once I got there, he didn't have a job for me, you know what I mean? And his personality towards me, because I just got out of jail and I was a thug, and he's a cowboy, you know what I mean? Yeah. So we clashed, you know what I mean? And he didn't really want to help me with anything. So I was out on the street in Colorado away from everything that I know. Yep. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where I ended up living in my car, just trying to like, damn, what am I gonna do from here? And I've never really been involved in drugs. I've smoked my weed and stuff like that, but as far as like coke or anything like that, that was never my cup of tea. Yeah. But it was one of those things that I didn't know where to turn. Like I felt like, taking a gun and just bam, like I'm worthless. I don't belong here, kind of like you said, I have no place here. Yeah. So that was probably, I would have to say, my lowest point until I kind of started figuring out how to surround myself with people that are doing good. You know what I mean? I had somebody that came and told me, you need to start learning computers because that's the future right there. You learn how to use a computer, you'll have a job anywhere. So that's kind of what I did is I started taking courses, going to these temp services and taking their little free courses, learning how to use Windows, all that stuff, and kind of just took that trajectory on, okay, so I'm pretty good at this. I would get high scores when I would take these tests, right? So the people would be like, wow, you're really good at this. Like you should really consider like deep diving into this and using that as a career path. And that's kind of where I found that little elevation that I think I could do this shit, you know what I mean? But that point right there where not knowing who you are, not knowing what you are, what you're capable of, you just feel worthless. You feel like you don't belong here, and I think that was my worst point there, is just sitting in my car, because my car was my home, and luckily I paid cash for my car. I wouldn't have a car, you know what I mean? And it wasn't a nice car, it was a beater car, bro, but it was my home, you know what I mean? And I was able to get a job, save my money, and then pay weekly rent at a hotel. So that was my living conditions probably for a good, I would say almost nearly a year, man. Damn. You know what I mean? Until I was able to really get myself on my feet and get my first apartment and felt like, oh, I did that shit, you know what I mean? This is my crib. you know. But that was definitely my lowest point right there. It's just being lost and wondering, you know, where do I belong here? Like, there's nothing for me here. And if I call back home and call my mom and let her know how I'm living, it's gonna cause more stress on her than I already caused her. You know what I mean? Because my whole childhood was nothing but stress on my mom, because she was the one that was always there when I got in trouble, got locked up, you know, needed anything. First and foremost, you know, she used to visit me in prison and say, how many of your friends have visited you?
Wow.
None, Mom. What? So you're telling me that you're in here because of them, you know, because you don't want to tell her nothing like that, and not one of them came to visit you?
Wow.
You know, and it kind of hit home like, damn, you're right. And she's like, and, you know, and it hit home when she told me, like, regardless of where you're at, what you do, what's put in front of you, you're always going to see me standing there. Nobody else, me. You know what I mean? And she's like, and you need to start thinking about that, because all these people you're defending, all these people that you're in here now for, they're out there living their life. And you know what I mean? And you're in here stuck for years, you know what I mean? And, you know, they can give two shits about that. You know what I mean? So that's kind of, and that's always kind of been in my head. My mom caught me with a strap when I was young before I got locked up. And she kind of just looked at me, and I had a gauge right here under my jicky jacket, and she like took my jacket, seen it, and then just covered me and just let me go.
Wow.
So the whole time in my mind, I was thinking like, damn, when I get home, I'm gonna fucking get it, because my mom's seen it, you know what I mean? But when I got home, my mom was waiting for me, but she wasn't mad or anything. She's just like, I'm glad you made it home. And I was like, okay, thanks, you know? And then she's like, I just wanna tell you something. I would rather someone take your life than me living the rest of my life knowing that you killed somebody else's baby.
Wow.
And that, whew, bro, that fucking hit me, and I was like, what? And I didn't understand it as a kid, bro. As a kid, I was like, that's messed up, Mom. Like, well, how are you gonna wish that on me? You know, because we're in street mode, bro. Like, I don't want to get smoked.
Right.
You know what I mean? But to her, and her mentality was like, there's no way I want to live with my son as a murderer. You know what I mean? So, you know, but growing up and really, once you find yourself, man, and once you really identify the purpose of why you're here, then all those little bits and pieces that and advice that people gave you throughout the years as a kid, they start making sense.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that's when you kind of start putting the pieces together and start, okay, so that's what they meant by this. All right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then let's get that on track and let's do this. But, you know, it's just one of those things that you had to learn the hard way.
Yeah.
It was always survival mode, and even at my lowest point, when I wanted to give up, it was just that survival mode, and was like, I gotta survive this. I gotta survive this. I gotta find a way out of this. You know what I mean? And regardless of how it is, I gotta put my pride to the side, and I gotta ask, like, yo, how did you get to where you were, man? Because I need to get there. You know, and luckily for me, there's people that I found that came into my life, bro. It's a blessing that the people that come into your life unexpectedly, and they show you the right path to go at, and then when you see that kind of boosts the direction that you're going in, then you just want to keep pushing and pushing, right? And now it's like, now I want to have these things. Now I want, you know, when I have my kids and my family with me, I want them to have this kind of life, not the life that I grew up with, you know what I mean? And that's kind of what, once I got out of that rock bottom point, it was no looking back, bro. I ain't never coming back to this spot, you know what I mean? And I made sure that, yeah.
And that's amazing, because I know a lot of people that didn't make it. You know what I mean? There was a point in my life where I was counting ages of people I made it to this age. You know what I mean? I made it because I know somebody that died at that age that didn't make it. And it's crazy to think like that, right? But when you come from those type of environments, it's like, you know, like it's a reality. I remember, you know, 5th grade, and I'll share this story. This wasn't part of the podcast, but I'll share it anyway. 5th grade, I remember we were looking for the lady that raised me, her son. That's the one that, for the lack of better terms, it was his popcorn. But he really taught me on, you don't fear anybody. You stand on what you believe. You don't take disrespect. You know what I mean? Well, we were looking for him because we knew there was a lot going on. So they were like, yo, did you see such and such? Like, no. So the night passed, and something told me to go in the backyard. So I woke up petrified. Right? I didn't even want to go out there. Something told me to go in the backyard. I went in the backyard. We had what's called an outhouse. Back in the day, they used to use the bathroom out there. He was laid by the outhouse, head blown off. Took his own life. And the reason for that was there was an altercation in the house. And his boyfriend kept putting his hands on his mother. And he told him, stop putting your hands on my mother. He already beat the dude up and everything. And then all of a sudden, and I'm laying in the bed, and I kind of lean over because I can see the hallway, and he go upstairs, come back, all you hear is boop, 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 right? So I'm in a room, and I get up. They scrambling, whatever. The dude somehow was able to get out. Blood everywhere. Now, I tell people this. I said, if the smell of pure blood will traumatize you. I couldn't get it out of my nose for I don't even know how long. Smelled just like rust, right? And the ironic part about the story, the guy that killed him was the one who committed suicide. The other guy's still alive today. He got shot in the head and everything, survived, right? And going through that moment, I went to school, and the kid happened to have HIV, and he said something, your mother, and I just hit him. And they sent me to the principal office, and he said, you know what? He said, we can't deal with you no more. You know what I mean? And my probation officer had me see the judge. And they were like, listen, it's over, man. You did too much. We're gonna have to take you and put you in a placement. And I literally, in that moment, first of all, I'm like, I got taken away from my mother. Now I'm getting taken away from these people who, that's all I knew. And I really looked at the judge and said, listen, and this is me vouching for myself. I said, listen, I'm on Ritalin, I'm in special ed, I'm really trying to do my best, but I promise you, if you give me one more chance, I'm gonna get it right. I promise you. And by the grace of God, I don't even know how, I got another chance. And I was able to meet my coach, who that's when life really changed. Like my 5th grade teacher had an impact, because I was a menace. And I did something one day and it really hurt her, and she was like crying in front of everybody. And she's like, I expect more from you. And that hit me, and I never felt like that before, because I'm like, what am I feeling? I don't know how to identify feelings. All I know is violence, really. So the feeling of someone caring for you was new for me. And it really, as a child, man, my wheels were turning, and I felt empathy and sympathy. And I was like, wait, this lady really cared about me. And it was wild, because that's the love, that's mother's love. I never got it, because my mother, you know what I mean? Yeah. So to see that, and to see she had expectation, it changed me. And by the time I got to middle school, I met my 5th grade teacher. This is just, talk about I was at a low, and he was like, listen, you can go one or two ways. My brother, he said, you could take the path of your brother, because my brother shut the computer down in the whole district. I don't even know how he did that. We have he said, or you can go this way. My brother did 14 years in prison. He's 39 now. You could do the math. But, through that time, he was getting in trouble. He said, you can make your own path, or you can go this way. And at the point in my life, I'm like, they don't want me. I can't try out for sports because they said, I'm too bad. I got to get myself together. I don't have nobody to call. I don't have a mother to go to. I don't know where my father is. All I know is if I act up in school, I know I'm getting beat home. And when I get home, I'm probably sitting in a corner, and my childhood was a little different. I slept in coats. You know what I mean? I slept in the basement dark by myself. Like, I look at all the ways what she was doing for me, and in a moment, I'm like, I'm being raised like I'm some type of animal. But later on, I'll tell you guys, and it blew my mind when I really figured out what was going on. But make a long story short, yeah, that it was super low to know people look at you as someone who's just a menace. I don't even want you around me. You know what I mean? And I was stealing and everything. We were surviving. You know what I mean? My brother robbed everybody on the block for us to eat. But for me, it was like, I thought it was normal, because I was like, yeah, I have to survive. But man, he looked at me and he was like, you need to, and I think I just got in trouble. I stole something happened. And he was like, you're going to go to 1-2 path. You take your brother out, you know where that end up. You have an opportunity to create your own path. Do it. And this is the same guy who, through high school, anything I needed. You know what I mean? He was my coach, but he really was, somebody, a father figure that I didn't have. And it was wild to see when you're missing things, like the whole Maslow hierarchy thing, food, nurture, those things are important, but parental investment and parental love, I don't care if it's from blood or no blood, there's something about that can change the most, evilest person, man. You know what I mean? And I'm a firm believer that, God is good, because at that time, I was really like, why am I going to school? Why am I doing any of this? First of all, I'm in special ed. You know what I mean? We walk out, people picking on us because being in special ed. So now you got to fight. And now people looking at you like you dumb because you're in the resource room, you get extra reading. The whole time I was just bad. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, but both of you touched upon this, but I really want to hone in on it a little bit about your turning point. tell me a little bit about a turning point where it was like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm different. Like when you not only did it, but you identify like yourself moving in that other direction. Yeah. You know what I mean? So when was your turning point? I know you mentioned like 7 years, like,
Yeah,
but
I think for me, from the moment that I told you for that circumstance, man, it really made me refocus on life. I think, I was married prior, I got divorced, but I was on this paper chase for so long, bro, and I think I let the fact, I was chasing money, right? Like since I was 16, man. Like you said, we went through it all, robbing people, pulling licks at the age of 16. But I was chasing money all these years, and it was like I just equivalated money to happiness, right? And I was trying to make all the money I could. I had good jobs. I was still hustling on the side. I was doing everything I could. And the shift in mindset from that day when I had this big void in life was I didn't put money anymore for it because I realized something that I had been missing out on life, like love, right? And I had all this love around me, but I just didn't, not that I didn't want to accept it, man. It's so hard to explain. It was more like the value of life for me had always surrounded money. And then my value of life at that point was like, I just want to be happy, And I think it was like, man, I have beautiful kids, and I need to be able to be happy for myself before I can make anybody else happy. And finding God was a way for me to be happy for myself. I had to find myself, what makes me happy, right? A purpose, and that's what I'm going for. I had to find a purpose for myself that had so much more meaning than money. During that time frame was when I was really getting into the fitness part of it, and I started personal training a little bit after, and I was kind of more devoted on taking care of myself and spending more, time with family. And I think once I hit that stride into working out and I started helping friends, the eye-opener for me was, the day that I had helped a friend of mine lose like 30, 40 pounds. Yeah. And this was before I started training people. I went to school. I went to school to be a personal trainer without the purpose of being a personal trainer. I just wanted to learn for myself, and I helped him. And there was a day where he came in, I'll never forget this, and he was like, man, like his eyes lit. He was like, bro, I got so many compliments on how I feel, bro. And that was my turning point. That exact moment, I knew that it was more rewarding for me to hearing that than me looking good. Right? Like I wanted to look good. I had this vision of myself where I look good, I have money, and I have this. But slowly I started realizing that wasn't really my purpose. That wasn't really making me happy. And the moment this man told me that he had this compliments on, and you saw his face, that he had never had that, right? Because he'd been big his whole life. Man, that changed me as a person. And I felt fulfilled that moment, understanding that I was able to help somebody, nothing to do with myself. And from there, I started taking clients. I started helping people. And the more I got involved into it and the more I would be able to help more people, I felt alive. I felt like, damn, like this is kind of like my calling, right? And amongst helping people physically, you start building relationships with people and they start telling you about their issues, right? As you know, as a trainer, people, it's not just training somebody physically. You get to hear everything about them. You get to know them as people. You get to hear their struggles. Yeah. And when you've already had a laundry list of fucking struggles your whole life, and at the age of 40-some, I have a lot of experience, right? So then I start helping people, like mentoring people without even trying. You're just sharing life stories, and you're noticing that people are starting to improve their quality of life, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally. And that changed me, bro. That changed me to the point where I was like, this is my purpose, And so I started building. I said, this is what I want to do, But I understood that there was a long road ahead to be able to do this in the scale that I wanted, which was owning a gym and whatnot. I had to actually sit down and say, okay, man, like I need to find a way to have this as my sole purpose, to do this. So I wrote my business plan. I started training at my house. I started Fitness Junkies clothing because I knew someday I wanted to open up a gym. And I started slanging tees out of the back seat of a car, basically, man, just slanging tees. And because I knew I wanted the name to be out there, and I started growing the whole vibe you see here, we had that in my backyard. You know, I put all my money into my backyard. I started training. I was working 16 hours a day, 3 years straight, saving every penny, buying equipment. And then it came to a point where I was putting events. That Battle of 300, the first one was in my backyard. I was paying money. You know, I had vendors in my backyard, bro. I had people calling me trying to get a membership to my gym in my backyard, legit. And that's when I knew I was ready to take that leap. And the gym for me here, it wasn't so much that I was looking for, you know, a way to get rich, because I still had my day job. And my day job, like I said, I'd made triple digits for years. I made a great living, and I could have done that for the rest of my life, but it wasn't my purpose. And when I told myself, I'm gonna build something where I can help so many more people on a big level, right? So I'm helping a handful of people at home, and it feels great. But what if I own something like this where I can have this platform and look at where we're standing and or sitting here today, right?
Yeah.
That was the purpose. The purpose is to use this for something so much more bigger than fitness, to help people in our situations that have been going down that road to know, like, damn, that motherfucker made it. That motherfucker, I live right next door to that dude in Maryville, you know, and to know that there's people just like us that need this message. You know, one thing I've came to realize is not everybody gives a shit about what we do. God isn't for everybody, unfortunately. People, you hear people in their perspective, right? For me, of course, but not everybody's for you. Not every message is for every person, but the right person will hear it. And when the right person will hear it, that's the only target that I need to really worry about, is how can I reach the people that want to be reached? And that's why I opened up this gym, because I knew that the money would come, but I knew that I could use this to do so much more for our community.
Wow, that's a lot, man. That is a lot. And
That's dope.
you actually covered a lot of some of my questions, and but no, it's good, because like my objective of doing this is to allow people, older, younger, whatever, to see people believe when they're going through something that no one can relate to them. Right. So when you look at, you know, and I trained and I worked with helping people deal with suicidal ideation for a while, and what I realized was a lot of men specifically will feel as if, one, nobody care, and I'm the only one going through this. And I don't want to be the biggest one I hear. I don't want to be a burden. You know what I mean? So when people are going through stuff, they tend to hide these things, right? But what I found is you will grow through what you go through if you allow God to water the seed, because you found your purpose by growing through pain. And we're going to go right into your turning point now, but I just wanted to talk about that really quick, how we need to realize that we're all connected some way, somehow. And maybe, you know, my cup of tea is not what you want to drink, but my man over here got the one you like, and he going to be able to get you to where you got to go. And, you know, we're stronger together. You know what I mean? So, OTG, tell us a little bit about, you know, your turning point.
All right, so I would say my turning point, kind of told you, like, when I moved to Denver and stuff, and kind of really started really talking to people that try to change my mindset. Once I came back from Denver and moved back to Phoenix, my biggest turning point was because I landed a job at a financial institution, right? Here I am, and one of the things that I got to tell you the story because it's crazy. When I was in Denver, I was still struggling. Even though I got my apartment and stuff, I was still struggling because I was living paycheck to paycheck. So the frustration was still there, but it was like, I got to keep my mind focused. I got to figure more stuff out on how I can not just live off this paycheck. So I wanted to look for another job. I found a job as a security guard, right? So the owner of the company, the security company, he was a Green Beret. So his name was Sam Cook. And big old stocky guy, you know what I mean? And me and him became really good friends. And when I worked for him, he liked how I worked. So he says, you know what, I need supervisors that can run these shifts and keep an eye on the people, because we had overnight shifts. So I was like, okay. So, you know, he promoted me to supervisor, gave me a vehicle, all this. I didn't have my license, you know what I mean? I was still riding dirty and all this stuff, but he was trusting in me, you know what I mean, that we could do this. So the more he started giving me and the more I started developing myself with him, it came to the point where I had to be honest with dude, you know what I mean? And tell him, like, yo, I don't have my driver's license. I'm a convicted felon. You know, he gave me a shot just off the air, like, just fill out this application, bro. We don't worry about the background check. I'll just put you to work. Yeah. All right, cool. And that was going to be like, here's a little extra money that I'm getting. But it turned out to be the biggest blessing that turned my whole life around. Once, the more I worked with him, and I think I was about almost 2 years deep working for his company, he did bounty hunting on the side, right? So he would tell me like, why don't you come with me? You can see what we do when we go bounty hunting. And he's like, you get a percentage from every bounty, so that's more cash in your pocket. And he's like, and you have your job as a security guard. The problem with that was my record now, because you can't be a bounty hunter with a record. And he wanted to carry guns. He didn't want to carry, you know, batons and spray. He's like, no, we get the big bounties. So I told him about my situation. He got to know me, who I was as an individual now, because now he's like, you have an identity now. You know what I mean? That's why I like you. I could see who you are. You know what I mean? He's like, so what we're gonna do? He's like, I really want you to do with me this with me. He's like, but I'm gonna do something for you that even if you don't stay here with me, is gonna give you that second shot. So he wrote the judge here letters, bro, using his military background as backup for the judge to seal my record. So when I got tried as a juvenile, but I got tried as an adult when I got sentenced. So as a juvenile, I was in the adult jails, and it kind of just led on. So with him, he had me write letters, he wrote letters, and I would say maybe about another year or so into it, I got a letter from the courts out of the state of Arizona that all charges have been dismissed and my record was sealed, bro. So to me, that was like clean slate. Like, you got to be kidding me. Are you serious? He's like, you're done, man. You could do whatever you want. He told me, you could do whatever you want and this ain't going to hang over your shoulders. No way, man. I was like, I couldn't believe it, right? You know what I mean? So I got to do bounty hunting with him, man, which was crazy. That's like another story all in itself. But I stayed with him for a little while longer, and then I wanted to come back home because I was excited to like tell mom, like, I don't have this on me no more, like, you know. And when I called her that I'm coming back home, that's the first thing she brought up. Like, are you sure you want to do it? They're going to send you back to prison, you know, this, that, or the other. I said, no, I'm good, Mom. Like, I'll explain to you. So I moved back over here, you know, kind of explained to her the situation, and she's very godly too. So she's just like, you know, God is looking out for you, and, you know, it's not over for you. That, you know, you got to take advantage of this. So I ended up applying for jobs that I felt were out of my league, at a bank, things like that. But I said, I'm gonna try it. Like, you know, he taught me like the sky's the limit. So I applied for a job there. I got the job. Like, oh shit, it worked. Like, it worked. Like, you gotta be kidding me, right? And this is where I think is my biggest turning point, is working in corporate, right? Growing up and being in that and being in jail, you hustle, and it's survival mode. So you find ways to hustle. You know, we did things you wouldn't believe of to get money and be able to re-up and hustle. You know what I mean? So we could stay where we're at. So a lot of what I took and learned from the streets, it's not very different in the corporate world. No. You know what I mean? Except it's legit. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I already had an upper hand, and I didn't know it because of what I learned in the streets. Yeah. So as I'm going through my time, I worked for Bank of America for like 11 years. You know what I mean? And I became a bank manager. Wow. I was managing a team of, you know, 20 to 30 individuals at one time. Wow. You know what I mean? I got to go to seminars and talk to millionaires, and they would tell me stories about how they got to where they're at. And they're the ones that started changing my mentality on how I think and how I value who I am as an individual, right? And they're saying, what's the difference as to why I could be a millionaire and not you? He's like, the difference is I believe I could be a millionaire. You don't see yourself as a millionaire. And they would plant that in my brain. They're like, you don't understand the kind of the opportunity that's in front of you that you're already qualified for because of how you grew up. You got that second chance, and now you can convert that into what you're doing here, and then it would work wonders for you. He's like, you have no idea. The biggest thing for me was like, I kind of went through where you went, where I'm doing good at this, but this is not what I want to do. Like, I wasn't happy there, bro. And it wasn't until I started managing teams that I knew I was good at reaching people. They gave me a team, and they said, if you could prove that you can manage this team, and they gave me the shittiest team, you know, that they could give me. Like, this is the bottom team. So if you do something with this, then, you know, you could do something. Within 2 months, we were #1 in the nation. Oh, wow. #1 in the nation, bro. And I shut up a lot of people because a lot of people didn't want me in that position, you know what I mean? But I went in there and I coached everybody, and it was just a matter of being real with them and kind of teaching them what I've learned. Like, there's no reason, like, I'll give you an example. I talked to an individual, this girl, and she was rough because I was like, so what are your ambitions in life? I'm already doing it. Well, what are your dreams? No, I don't really have dreams. Well, now, like, trying to get, like, what can I use to like, as that apple, right? And she wouldn't budge. So I said, damn, all right. Well, is there anywhere you haven't traveled? Hawaii. I got you.
There you go.
I got you, right? So I said, check this out. You're living good right now, right? She's like, yeah. I said, so with the money you make here, the money your husband makes, you guys got everything you need, your kids got everything you need? Yeah. So why haven't you been to Hawaii? Well, it's because it's not within our budget and our finances on what we're doing, so we'd rather live how we're living, and that's a sacrifice we have to make. Okay, so what if I told you to continue living what you're living, but I can teach you how to start making incentive because you're not making incentive. And since you're not making incentive and you're doing good with the money you're making, let's get you incentive. You put that money in your savings account and don't touch it like it was never there. I said, let's do that for a year. And in a year, I promise you, you're gonna have money for you and your family to fly to Hawaii, fly back, have spending money, and still come back with money in your pocket. Wow. Yeah, right. How are we gonna do that? Yeah. All right, let's do this. So I created an action plan for her, right? Broke it down for her, gave her a visual. I went out, bought a Hawaiian calendar, hung it at her desk. Bam. You know, from now on, you're gonna look at that calendar every single day, and you're gonna envision yourself being there. So I got her to bump up her metrics, bro, and we did a lot of sales, their collections and stuff like that, you know, balance transfers and things like that, to where I started getting her good at what she does. She started focusing and wanting to do better because she's like, let's see if this really works, right? Within 1 year, she was no longer on my team, but I still worked at the bank. Within 1 year, she came, said, hey, I just want to tell you thank you so much. Guess where I just got back from? You got to Hawaii, huh? Yeah, we did. Yeah, and everything you said was true, you know what I mean? And it was one of those things that like, that is what I hung on to as to, that's where I need to go.
It's a gift.
I have that gift that I can reach people and I can like really open them up to get them to accomplish a lot more. Yeah. You know what I mean? So my turning point at that point was like, okay, I'm gonna leave the bank. That's gonna be a huge decision for me because this is what's making me right now. This is where I'm at right now. But if I leave here and I focus on where I really want to be at, then let's roll the dice. You know what I mean? Let's roll. My mindset was already like I could do anything I want to. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's what they instilled in me. I could do anything I want to. And is it going to be hard? Yeah. But if I keep pushing, once I hit the other end, I'm gravy. You know what I mean? So once I left that, I really started focusing on my music. When we were in jail and all that, we were big on music. We used to rap in there, write songs. So I kind of leaned on that and I said, how can I incorporate this with what I'm learning and what I'm doing and things like that? So then I started focusing on my music and I started networking with people and I started kind of getting odds and ends jobs just to help me get through. Yeah. But then in the back end, building my structure and my foundation on what I knew I was going to launch, right? And that kind of was where immediately I found out like, okay, so you want to lean on this, you want to focus on this, and you want to make that your go-to, but you still have to do this in order to keep shit moving, right, so that way you can be able to do that, right? So I started building my own studio. You know, I have a big studio in my house that as a kid, I would never imagine I would have a house with a recording studio in it, right? And little by little, I would just buy a microphone. I started with my laptop and a microphone, that was it. I didn't have nothing else. You know what I mean? So I'm like, I gotta figure this out. Yeah. Then I would start, and back then when we were growing up, that stuff wasn't available to you. Right. Having a studio in the house is unheard of. You know what I mean? Like, who has a studio in their house? Yeah. You know, but as technology developed, it's like, what? I could have that? What? They made software for that? Yeah. So then I started putting things together, and then I started really finally realizing, okay, what's the equipment that I really need to have? I started building that. Once I did that, then I started focusing, okay, we need to get in front of people. We need to really start making our name for ourselves. We need to get people involved in what we're doing. Yeah. We need to start, so I started pushing it. I created G's First Studios. That's my company. I said, everything I'm gonna run through G's First Studios. We started building, but the main thing is I didn't want to lose focus on my main grasp that I had was you have this thing that where you can reach out to people and touch, right? So giving back to the community, helping the youth, and that's where I got into teaching music at the Durango Detention Center, things like that. Sure. You know what I mean? That I'm like, that's my main goal. That's my key right there. That's what keeps me going. But I could still develop my dream in the midst of it and combine both of them together. You know what I mean? So as I went, it took years, bro, years. I'm not saying like it happened overnight, but it took a lot of hustle, a lot of work. You know what I mean? Building this, building that, learning this, failing here, you know. But once I got it down, then there was no going back. It was just like, keep going forward. So I ended up building from that. And then I ended up, okay, now how can we expand? I got to get out of Phoenix and get people in other states to know who we are, because people here aren't going to love you unless another state or somebody else might love you. You know, that's just how, that's the name of the game.
That's the way it works, yeah.
So we started doing that and started spreading out. Me and my wife, you know, we've been together for 10 years, and when I met her, she's a hustler too, bro, and she has that mentality like, what do you want to do? Okay, let's do it. Let's sit down, talk about how we could do it, what we need to do it, and let's make it happen. You know what I mean? So I said, well, I got a vision of the studio. I got, you know, the company G's First Studios, and I really want to make something out of it, and I want to see how far it takes us to be able to use that to be able to grow this and bring the youth in here and start developing people. So she hit home with it, bro, and she was my, when I was out working and trying to make the money so we could do that, she'd be at home researching. I'd come home. All right, so check this out. You know, we're going to Cali. You have a show out there. Are you kidding me? What? Where? All right, call this person, call this person. Well, we found out that, you know, as an artist and being in the industry, there's a lot of promoters that want to take money out of your pocket and give you 10 minutes on stage. Does it benefit you? Not really. People are going to hear you, but they're not necessarily going to follow you that. So we started kind of learning the ins and outs, like, damn, I ain't going to do that again. Damn, that would have been going towards my video. That would have went towards, you know, studio time. So then we came up with the concept like, let's create our own venues. Let's throw our own venues. We won't charge the artists to perform, and we'll book a celebrity to headline. You know what I mean? Give these artists face-to-face time with these celebrities so that way they can coach them, tell them this is what you need to do, this, that, or the other. You know what I mean? And we kept doing that and kept going in circles until I landed Lil Eazy-E.
Nice.
And to me, that was huge. We grew up with Eazy-E, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When Eazy-E passed away, it was devastating for me because that was like my guy right there, that, like, you know what I mean? And one day I got home and I would always tell my wife, wouldn't that be dope if we just like were able to contact Lil Eazy and get him to come down here? We brought Lighter Shade of Brown, we brought all these other headliners. And one day I got home and my wife says, call this number. Like, what's this number? Call it, trust me. I was like, well, who do I ask for? Lil Eazy. No way, you're kidding. You got his number? So I, you know, and I tell him the story. I told it to him plenty of times because the story's funny. I called the number and this lady with a southern accent, you know, gets on the phone. And, oh, I'm sorry, I must have it. Wait, who are you trying to reach? I said, Lil Eazy. No, you got the right number. What's going on? So I'm just thinking of, you know, I want to bring him down to do a show. So she tells me, you know, it's a real sweet lady. Let me call Eric and I'll talk to him and I'll call you back and see what he says. I said, perfect. So the next day she calls me back and says, okay, I talked to Eric. He said yes. You know, he'll charge you this much. He'll go down there, this. And I said, can I talk to Eric? You know what I mean? And then I was like, it's nothing against you. I said, but that just validates that I'm talking to somebody. I'm not going to get hustled. You know what I mean? So she puts him on the phone, bro, and immediately I knew it was him. He sounds just like his dad. So I was like, oh, man, it's so great to meet you, bro. This is what I'm thinking of doing, this, that, or the other. I got you, bro. I'll go down there, you know, just, you know, buy me an airplane ticket, and then cash me out on this much. So me and my wife hustled up the money. We brought him out to do the first show. We've had 20 lowriders, bro, caravanning him to the show. We went big on him because I was like, I think this is the one. This is our outlet, you know what I mean? This is the reason why we were building for such a long time, was to be able to land something like this. So I kept in touch with him, kept calling him, hey man, you want to do a song together? Yeah. All right, how much is it going to be? It's going to be this much. Here, let's get a song together. So we did Phoenix to Compton. And then called him, you want to do a video to Phoenix to Compton? Yeah, bro, we could do a video. Perfect, bro. So we took a team. I had my boy Lyric, I had Quick, I had a team of like, I would always say like 12 people. We all took a trip to Compton, bro, to shoot a video with Lil Eazy. First time anybody's been to Compton. We like didn't know the ins and outs or nothing, but we shot a video at his grandma's house, at Eazy-E's house that he grew up in, right off Compton, right there. And you know, we shot the video. He was like, yeah, bro. He's like, Compton is not like people think. He's like, across the street right there, that's Cali Park, Compton Rip. He's like, but if you go to the next block over, he's like, that's Grape Street. He's like, but if you go one more block that way, it's this. And I was like, dang, no wonder it was crazy like over here, you know what I mean? But we got to see that firsthand, bro, and it was like an experience for all of the artists that were with me. And they were just like, you know, dang, I can't believe that, this, that. And then it got to the point where it became normal for me and Easy to be on the phone talking business. You know what I mean? And after a while, I just said, well, you know, kind of joking with him, you might as well make me a part of your label, bro, because, you know, you know what? I think you're right. And I was like, no way, like, hell yeah. So we kept hustling, bro, and I bought him business out here, kept pushing. I told my wife, now our focus is to be able to solidify our stuff, is to make sure that we get people out here to know who Little Easy is and that he's out there. So that's what our focus was. We got him meet and greets, we got him performances out here. We kept building, making money, you know what I mean? And now we're waiting on a couple of contracts with cannabis industries that want to use his name in the cannabis industry. And I put that together for him, you know what I mean? So I get a chunk out of whatever business we do there. So it's just solidifying the business and keeping it moving forward. On my birthday, this just past month, we did the grand opening for the barber shop. You know, Little Easy performed out there, and then I got presented with my official Rich and Ruthless chain, man.
Nice,
So
man.
to me, that was like, everything I worked for was for this. That like solidified my chapter there,
man,
bro.
that's dope.
You know, and the whole turning point was at the bank, because that's when people started teaching me how to value myself. You know what I mean? Know that you have something special, because if you didn't have nothing special, you wouldn't be sitting in front of us. And they're like, and there ain't no reason why you can't have what we have. The reason why we have it is because we know that that's what we're worth, and we go out and get it.
Mindset.
Whereas to someone like you who came from where you came from, they're like, it's a little bit different because your mind taught you that you're worthless. The people growing up around you always taught you that you were worthless because you were always in trouble, because you spent all this time in jail, you know, because you never did. So it was always putting you down, putting you down. They're like, we're here to tell you that everything that you learn in the streets, whether you believe it or not, is what's going to catapult you in your career, because now not only do you have smarts with computers and what we taught you in the financials, but you got street smarts. So you're ahead of the game with most people that are in here because they didn't grow up like that. You know, and that's what, you know, immediately my mentality changed quick, bro, quick. Everything that I did, everything that I followed at that point was like, if I want to do it, I'm going to do it. You know what I mean? I just got to work hard, and I got to figure out which direction I'm going to take to accomplish that, but I'm going to accomplish it. And we accomplished everything. When I told my wife, I want this barber shop, all right, so what do we got to do? Well, first I got to enroll in school. Went and enrolled in school, got my license, said, all right, let us get this shop cracking. You know what I mean? And we had a grand opening, you know what I mean? So it's just, manifestation is huge for us, and everything that we speak about, I feel, is your manifestation. You can make it happen, you know what I mean? And there ain't nobody, like I tell everybody, artists now, even the kids that I coach and everything, is, you know, when you're on a mission, I said, you want to create your own lane and not worry about what the people around you are doing. You know what I mean? I said, it's easy for me to get caught up as an artist and see all these people, oh man, he just dropped a new video. Oh man, he just performed in front of that big old crowd. And that could eat you up if you don't stay focused. Because now you're derailed, and all your focus is I gotta do better than him, when you shouldn't worry about where he's at. You should worry about what you're at and what you need to do to get to where you need to be, right? So it's just kind of like what we talked about before. You put those horse blinders on and you just run. You know what I mean? And that's what they taught me, is just run. Don't worry about if this guy's doing better. You don't worry about if this guy's driving a Lambo. You put on your blinders and you run, and don't stop until you reach where you're gonna get. And then at that point, then turn back and you see where they're at compared to where you're at. You know what I mean? And that's kind of where I teach, the kids now, and that's, kind of how we met and things like that. But everybody that knows me and has worked with me, you can ask them the same thing about how I think and everything, and I tell all my people the same thing, bro. Like, if you knew my story, where I came from, trust me, you'd be like, there's no way that you came from that. But I came from the worst of the worst, bro, and that low point that we talked about I thought was the end for me, and I didn't want to see the next day. I didn't want to wake up the next morning because I knew I had to face what I was already facing. But being surrounded with people that gave me that shot, my guy Sam Cook, who wrote the judges and said, my guy's doing this for me. I'm a Green Beret. I'm coaching him and I'm developing him to become a man. And this man, the judge, quickly was like, I got you. You know what I mean? I got you. Like, and then from that, having that clean slate, and then landing that financial institution job and having those people in front of me, that kind of built that up in me. Like, you're worth something, bro. Like, you're valuable. And until you realize that, you ain't getting nowhere. You have to understand how, the value that you got, and you got to understand how to use your skill set to get you to where you want to be. You know what I mean? And once I focused on that, my mentality from that point forward was way different. You know what I mean? I have a lot of friends that I grew up with, gangbanging and all that are alive right now, that are doing good. And I'm still friends with them, and we talk, and they're just like, that's crazy, bro. Like, and I tell them, like, man, what you're doing and the fact that you're here, you're pushing, bro, like, we made it, you know what I mean? We made it. We're grown men, you know what I mean? We have our families and this, that. But there's a lot of people that we lost. There's friends that I have that are locked up that'll never see the light of day. I think of my friends that I lost when I was 13, 14 that got shot because we were out in the streets doing gang-related things. And I think about that now because I have kids that age, and I'm like, my boy was that age when he freaking got shot in the heart with a gauge. What? I look at my kid and I'm like, what? We were that little and we were doing this stupid shit. Like, the perspective right now is totally different, bro. Like, I can't believe that. I can't. You know, and you look at the kids now and the ages that they're at now, and when I was that age, I was locked up. I was locked up. Like, I was walking around town with a gauge, dumping on people. Like, and I was like, I look at my kids and I was like, I see my kids as babies, bro. Like, you know what I mean? They're babies, bro. Like, but you think back at how we were, and it was like, we didn't care.
The Wild
like,
West.
We didn't care. The Wild West, man. It was survival mode. But, you know, I'm blessed to have that turning point in my life. And I always am blessed for that because without those people sitting in and kind of telling me that I'm worth something, I think that my struggle would have continued a lot longer than what it had because they made me believe that I was a valuable person, bro. And when I was getting promotion after promotion, it kind of solidified. You know what I mean? That, damn, I do got something here. You know what I mean? So that was great, man. That was great.
That's so incredible. It's inspiring to hear other people's stories because, again, my primary focus on is, you know, how can I take what I've been through and catapult to where my kids will never even know at all, right? Because your struggle is not my struggle, but the world is still tough, right? And I'm just, you know, this opportunity was great, man. I really appreciate you guys sharing your story and just allowing, you know, our audience to see that, believe it or not, gift, purpose, those two things, when they aligned, the world is yours. Absolutely. And there's people out there that believe in you. You know what I mean? And sometimes, let's just keep it real, it don't look like family. You know what I mean? And in fact, if I'm keeping it real, sometimes family is the last people to support you. You know what I mean? Not for nothing, you know, my Savior, he went to Nazareth. This man saved humanity. He went back to his hometown. They didn't show him no respect. You know what I mean? So understand and acknowledge that you mentioned this and you talked about just staying, you know, tunnel vision, right? Understand and acknowledge that when you stay in your lane, there's less traffic, right? It's obviously important for us to know who's around us and what's going on. But it's more important to stay in your lane because it's less traffic, so you get there faster, but it's not as complicated. It's not as confusing. You know what I mean? So just real quick, as we're closing, you know, what are some things you guys might got coming up that you might want to share? Giving back to the community, whatever you're doing that's coming up. You know, the years are closing out. I think you mentioned about, you know, the toy drive. I know you got the big event coming up here. So, you know, you want to share what you got coming up?
So right now we have a night lift coming up that's just for our gym, but we're inviting everybody to come down to see what we do. But typically we do 2 fundraisers a year. So we'll be planning the next one probably right around that February, March time. February we'll be doing the AZ Lowrider Show.
Nice.
March I will be at the Arnold.
Nice.
And then I'm working on my pre-workout, my supplement line right now, so that's already in the making. So I'm hoping by April I should have a pre-workout. I'm working on creatine and possibly hydration, so that's big. So it's a big investment, man, but I feel like with the support system and the marketing, I think it's a good time. You know, I think everything is in segments. Timing is everything, you know, and I waited on it. I was going to do it a year and a half ago, and I don't feel it was the right time, and now I think it's all coming together slowly but surely, man. So.
That's dope.
Yeah.
That's dope. What about you?
We got a lot coming up. First and foremost, my shop, focused on that, making sure that we get, you know, clients and everything going in. Right now we're doing good because I have some dope people in there that are always booked. But I'm wanting to grow on that. So we're going to focus on that. I have, the end of this month, I'm doing another class at the Juvenile Detention Center and teaching music in there. This time I kind of brought one of the artists that I work with to accompany me so I can kind of bring him into that world and kind of use, you know, kind of open his eyes to that and say, you know, this is our purpose right here. You know what I mean? I have a lot of these young artists that were locked up before when I did the class that are now getting out and they're contacting me. You know, we want to meet with you. We want to discuss about music. We want to discuss about barbering. So I want to focus on that and start opening my doors to these young individuals and give them an outlet, bro. Because a lot of people, and in talking to them, all these youngsters, they're in that life that we were living when we were that young. The only difference right now in what I tell them is that now you guys have someone to turn to when we didn't have no one to turn to. So, take advantage of the fact that I'm here speaking to you, and take advantage of my contacts and the people that surround me to help develop who you are as an individual and create that future for yourself. Getting into next year, we're going to stay focused on the community. I have a tour that's going to be coming up, so I'll be touring a little bit. We have a lot of events that we're going to have at the barbershop with the lowrider community to kind of keep that going and involve the community and bring the community together. But it's nonstop for us, man, and it's just pedal to the metal and keep pushing. Our main thing is to stay focused on the community and keep doing things for the community and kind of create that unity, you know what I mean? So everybody has somewhere to go to, and there's not that segregation. Where I have my barbershop, it's not the best known area, but we're changing that. You know what I mean? That was known as the drug block, because it's dark over there and people go there, do their thing, whatever. It was full of a lot of homeless people and things like that. But we're cleaning it up, and all of the other businesses that are there come out and praise us every time we do something. Oh, it's about time somebody's doing something here. Thank you guys so much, that. So we got their support in everything that we're doing. We're remodeling the whole, we're repaving the whole paving and then remodeling the whole plaza. You know what I mean? To make it look brand new and make it more inviting for everybody that's around there. So that's going to be our focus going forward into next year, working with Lil Easy, making sure he's involved in everything that we do. One of the biggest things for me is now, especially that I got officialized into Rich and Ruthless, is to keep that brand moving out here and making sure that everybody stays connected into the ties that we have in regards to that. And the biggest dream for the youngsters is just letting them know, like, you're not within a long distance to meet with somebody like Little Easy who could sit down and coach you and to help develop you as well. And when I was in the Durango detention center, he made a video for the kids, letting them know that he's thinking about them. If they need anything, holler at my boy G. And we're just proud of you guys. Keep your head up, and that you guys always have support from us. So if you ever need to talk to us, let us know. G will get you in contact with me, and we'll have that conversation. You know what I mean? So Easy's a humble guy. So I kind of, in order to represent Rich and Ruthless and where he comes from, he's a very loving person, bro, very humble person, will never turn down a picture from nobody or an autograph from, especially with the kids. So I kind of feel like I have to mirror that energy in order to get everybody to understand that this is who we are. Absolutely. And this is what we're trying to do as a unit, you know what I mean? Absolutely. So that's definitely what the next year looks like, and we're going to push hard to make sure that continues.
And how do we reach you?
You can reach me Instagram, Facebook, everywhere. My Instagram is G's First Studios, Geez First Studios. Yep. You can find me at OGT Hernandez on Facebook, or G's First Studios as well. Yep. Send me a message, do whatever. I respond to all my messages all the time. Yep. You need help, you need sponsors. We love getting involved with communities and helping the community develop events as well. So, reach out to us, because you never know what we can help you with.
Nice. And Henry, how do we reach out to you?
Easiest way would probably be social media, which would be the Fitness Junkies page, or my direct page is under Henry Esco. So you can reach us out, DM us, email, however you like. I give free tours of the gym. We do have a free open gym every first Saturday of the month. If you want to come and get a complimentary lift and check out and see what we do, so just hit us up. We're here.
Nice. And so real quick, first and foremost, thank you guys so much. This was a pleasure. You can reach me at I'm on Instagram, Facebook. Facebook, I don't really rock with Facebook like that, but I'm in TikTok. And more importantly, we have a huge event coming up in January. Thanks to my guy here who allowed me to use this facility. It's a youth development leadership boot camp here at this gym where it's going down. Bring your kids out, because we're going to be teaching them some critical leadership skills with some lifting components to it, and some life skills and coping skills that they can use to substitute whatever, what we find is a lot of people don't have healthy coping habits, right? So our job is to help identify and give them what they need. But it's going down here. Stay tuned for the date. And bring your kid out. We'll be advertising it more. But thank you guys so much. We appreciate you guys. And we'll see you again in the future. All right, guys. Appreciate it. Yes, sir.